Hey, good evening, everybody, and welcome to episode number 9 of Two Guys, a Girl, and a Scene, the premier movie podcast for the Geeks Worldwide Radio Network. Tonight, we are recording about 9:45-ish Eastern Time on Sunday, the 17th of January, and tonight is our top 5 show for the month of January, where we will be counting down our guilty pleasures. And tonight I have with me the lovely Miss Sarah Belmont.
Hi guys. I'm here.
Sorry, and the equally lovely Mr. Jonathan Reyes.
What is up?
Oh, Jonathan, you got the pop filter tonight, huh?
No, not yet. Not yet.
Oh, okay.
Soon.
Is that
Soon.
that's just the mic?
Yeah.
I thought you were wearing a tie for a second. Then I looked closer.
Yeah, no, I changed up the setup because last week I watched just a little bit of the replay of last week's, and I was just leaning this way the whole time.
All right, wait. Whoa, wait, is that? You have the new camera now?
Yes.
Oh, okay, that's what it is. I knew something
So
was
nice
different.
and clear. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can actually see me moving my mouth. I don't look like I'm like staticky.
I know, man. You look like you're on frickin' CNN or something.
Yeah. But yeah, so I just changed up the setting because I had the camera to my right, and I was leaning, so I said I gotta put it where I can actually manage it a little better.
Nice. And you got is that a black curtain you've got around your?
No, I just have the light off, just the main light. I have the lamp here, because the other light will you see everything now with the new camera. So.
Nice. So,
Great, Gus is behind me.
Like, sorry.
Anyway, yeah.
So, how goes it tonight, guys? Any significant goings on in your lives? How's your week been? Sarah, Sarah, is it just cold there, or do you actually have snow?
No, we don't have snow. It's Juneau, so it snows here, and then the rain like washes it all away. Very different from where I'm originally from, in the interior in Fairbanks. So it's just cold.
You say all those geographic references as if they should mean something to me. I don't know those things. but it's I was about to say it's glad to hear that you're just cold. But that's not what I really mean. It's good to hear that you don't have snow, at least, I think is what I'm trying to say.
It is.
John, rescue me, man.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's just been a crazy week just overall in terms of a couple of changes going on at the GWW website. A little facelift happened yesterday. Some new editors. So, I mean, it's been busy.
Oh, should I say, first
dropping.
of all, congratulations to Sarah for being promoted to entertainment editor.
Oh.
And yeah, that's what I always say. Those always wind up being. Anytime there's an announcement about, oh, hey, great, things are great for the site. You know, we're going to be doing this, we're going to be doing that, and I'm like, wait, that means somebody's doing more work. Is it me?
Exactly.
Is it you? So, and Jonathan Reyes for being promoted to news editor.
Yes, thank you.
Running the news desk.
Yeah, it's been interesting so far, but fun.
Yeah,
some new changes for sure.
That's a 24/7 gig, dude.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm getting like messages at like 2 in the morning. I'm like, oh boy, all right. But yeah, no, everything's been good. Lots of fun stuff coming up. All the shows are coming back next week, so all the discussions will be pumping again.
Yeah, now I guess Sarah is the only one of us who is technically officially on the entertainment beat. So my apologies go out to you, Sarah. I guess this is your last weekend of the hiatus.
I had a hiatus weekend. When did that happen?
Yeah. Okay. So your assignment had a hiatus. The fact that you chose not to take it—that's a different thing.
Technicality.
So, and some of those shows have started coming back early, right? I got completely taken off guard by the fact that Supergirl was on. And then I guess entertainment editor Everett Harn advised me this morning that the Blacklist is back on as well.
Yeah, a couple of them just kind of threw themselves in there over the last. I think it was like last week, the first week of January, And then I know Supergirl didn't air this week. I think it was because the Golden Globes or whatever was going on.
Right. Now, Sarah's big thing this week has been the Making a Murderer documentary review series, right, Sarah? That's been doing well,
Mhm.
generating a lot of conversation.
Has it?
I mean, that was a question.
I have no idea.
Generating a lot of conversation.
I don't think so. I haven't been a part of it.
Yeah, I mean,
Excluding me from it.
nobody from the people, just discussions here around where I am and where I work, and everybody keeps talking about it. So it's like this big thing. Everybody just like, oh my God, are you seeing this show? And I'm like, whoa, okay.
I don't think you necessarily have to watch it though.
Yeah.
Like, you know the story, and if you read any review or anything that's come out about the show after, you get an understanding of what it is. I don't, like, 10 hours is a lot, and now, like, I feel like you had your chance because they dropped it when all the regular shows were off the air. So, of course, everybody's going to get talking about it because you have the time. But now up against, like, your normal TV routine, I suppose, I don't think it's really worth it. That's just my opinion.
Okay, so you were not all that enthralled by that documentary?
It's a really well-constructed show. The story itself is just elevated by how they filmed it, how they edited it primarily.
Okay.
But overall, I don't think it's a do or die. This is the best. And also, it's not going to go past one series. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Very good. Jonathan, anything super interesting that you've been penning by your own hand, or anything super interesting that you've been editing?
Oh man, I know. Well, would this be? Could it count as like what we're watching too and stuff like that, or a little later?
Yes, Sarah. Although guilty of one gaffe, which I will not mention on the air, there being an agenda, Sarah will want us to stick rigidly to it.
Okay.
What?
That's just her.
I'm sarcastic.
Oh, never mind. That is later in the show. Okay, yeah. So I mean, one thing I do want to point you to this site that I thought was really good that I read, that I probably wouldn't have read if I hadn't been starting to edit some news stories. But it was it's a games piece by Ben Suri, one of our writers for the site. He did a piece on Hitman and how all of a sudden IO Interactive has decided to make it episodic after saying no, and he's got some statements in that piece. It's a really well done one. It's up there now. It's called Hitman Goes Episodic. It's a really good, very well written. I was impressed by it. It kind of was interesting to hear that news too. So yeah, that was something. And then I know for me, it'll make its way later into the show as well. But Star Wars Rebels had its mid-season trailer drop, I think Friday, and it was amazing, absolutely amazing. So I did a bullet point kind of breakdown of that. That if you haven't seen that show, should be just as excited for that as Flash and Arrow. But yeah, so those are a couple of things that I definitely like to point to that are pretty cool. Pretty cool.
All right, man, let's go over to our box office receipts section.
Yes.
Jonathan, you want to run down the numbers for us, please?
Yeah, so I'm changing up the format a little bit instead of just like throwing numbers. I saw a really well done kind of piece done by USA Today earlier today. It's on my Twitter. It's like one of the first links. And they kind of just like gave you the kind of the parameters of everything, what it means for the box office, stuff like that. I really liked how they did it. So this week's number one, Star Wars is gone from number one finally. It was in number one for 4 weeks. Right along to the Ice Cube and the Kevin Hart. There we go. Kevin Hart, the Ice Cube and Kevin Hart just filmed. It came out last year.
And Kim Jong.
Yeah, Olivia Munn.
No, yes, Olivia Munn and Kim Jong.
Okay. I know nothing about that series, so
I just call him out because he's I guess.
Yes, I know who you're talking about now.
Yeah,
okay.
the guy from Community. Yeah, sorry.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not into these like these comedy type films and stuff. I don't know. I mean, I've heard of like obviously these guys. I sound really dumb now, but anyway. So, yeah. So that movie came out. It's a follow up to last year's movie, which was a sleeper hit. It made 134.9 million last year. Even though it had really bad reviews, this one had really bad reviews too, but made a lot of money again, 34 million for the number one spot. The original made 41.5 million. And Star Wars was in third with 25 million. So still making a good chunk in its fifth week. So and then Revenant was in second with 29.5 million. And that's already overperformed. I don't know the exact budget for it, but it's already made 87.7 million, which is what they not as big as the budget of the film, so that was good. Third place, I think was I think it was okay. Yeah, Daddy's Home. That's the Mark Wahlberg, Will Ferrell one. That 9.3. That's in fifth. And then what was the fourth place? Oh yeah, um, I had it here. Oh yeah, yeah. Fourth place was Michael Bay's 13 Hours, the Secret Soldiers of Benghazi. That made 16 million.
Now, is that movie actually 13 hours?
No.
Okay.
No, it's not doing a 24 thing No, but yeah, 13 hours. And I was kind of surprised it came in low because it was receiving some not high praise, but it was getting some like, oh well, Michael Bay actually made a film. Um, so that one came a little lower than I thought it would. But yeah, so those were the top five. So just to round them out again, Right Along 2 number one, The Revenant in two, Star Wars in third, fourth was 13 Hours, and fifth was Daddy's Home. And yeah, they actually quoted the Rentrack senior media analyst, Paul, I'm not going to say his last name, Dergarabedian. I'm sorry if I screwed that up. But anyway, so he says it's inevitable. This is on Star Wars. He said it's inevitable. No movie can stay number one forever, obviously. I'm adding the obviously. He says, quote, there are no tears being shed over at Disney. They rewrote the record books with Star Wars. And like I said, it made 25 million this week, and it's amassed 851 million overall, so it's fine, and nearly 1.9 billion worldwide. So yeah, it's made a lot of money, and it still made a lot. So yeah.
So do the box office receipts in the order make sense to everyone? I mean, were you guys expecting anything different, or does that rank ordering sound like something that surprises
for
you?
me, I thought the way how Revenant actually performed really well last in its first week. I think it was in 34 million. No, it was like 38 million, just a couple off from Star Wars' 41. I thought it would come in first place again because I just saw the competition. I said Right Along 2, not really. But then I keep forgetting a lot of people do like these kind of like I'm not, and I think you and I have discussed it in some of our past spoiler casts. People do like those kind of like I'm gonna sit down for an hour and 40 minutes and just not really think about what's going on, just laugh my head off kind of thing.
Right. Now, was this opening weekend for The Revenant?
No, this was its
second weekend.
Yes, yeah, second week of wide release.
Okay. Sarah, what are your thoughts? I think you've actually been to see The Revenant.
I did. I saw it this weekend. I was one of the people who paid for that.
So you're what, $4.50 is included in that
Ouch.
$7 million?
$6.
Oh wow, and high cost of living up there.
Actually it is. But anyways, yeah, I'm not surprised. January is always a slow month. I don't think that I think as weeks go by, it's getting less and less likely that Star Wars is going to catch up with Avatar and hit that 3 billion mark that Avatar left. So, but it's broken all these other records, so I don't think anybody's disappointed by it, and it'll be interesting to see how well Episode 8 does.
Right. Now, there was a piece written somewhere, I forget where I saw it, about, and there's probably been several pieces written with analyses on why that is the case, why Episode 7 is not likely to catch Avatar. Um, the only thing I can think of is it because, and I hate to go at this right on the nose as much, but is it because it is predominantly a movie written around a not very diverse cast, whereas Avatar, because a lot of the time on screen they are avatars and it's kind of absent of color, ethnicity, that it had more of a worldwide appeal? Or have you guys seen any other reasons as to why Episode 7 is unlikely to catch Avatar, despite the fact that movies are now more expensive?
I think, I mean, it might be weird saying it, but Star Wars is it's known, so I think people know what it is, and they go because they want to see it. They know what Star Wars is, but I think Avatar was new for everybody, and it was this amazing. Everybody was talking about the visuals and the experience and how it was IMAX and the just it was just this amazing thing that you hadn't seen before because of the way it was done. I think that could be a part of it, but that's just kind of me, just like kind of throwing it out there. Like people know what Star Wars is. You're either gonna go if you like it, and if you don't like it or whatever, you're gonna eventually see it or whatever. But I think just Avatar had so much more of the just kind of the just people talking about it a lot. Not in terms of like Star Wars has gotten a lot of discussion afterwards, but I think it's just the major fans. I think Avatar had more of it was more of a general thing, where Star Wars it's like if you're a fan, you're gonna go see it. I'm making no sense, but that's okay.
That's all right, man. We'll continue the Babelfish. Um,
I
Go ahead, Sarah.
I would argue that Star Wars is a diverse cast with, like, you have John Boyega, Daisy Ridley, she's female front and center, and then you have Oscar Isaac. So I think they did a good job in that regard. You could have, though, have a point because it is the Avatar is all like those stereotypes completely get pixelated, I guess. I don't know. But at the same time, I think what John was trying to explain is that Avatar came out at a point where nobody really took 3D or IMAX seriously. And so when it dropped, everyone was so blown away that it was more about the experience and not necessarily a story because everybody's heard it. It's Pocahontas in space. It's Dances with Wolves in space.
There you go, Dance with
It's
Wolves.
just, it's not the most original movie. At the same time, it's the special effects and the quote-unquote experience of watching it in the theater, in IMAX, in 3D, that really sold all those tickets. And then, so I guess that's where, and then maybe an argument can be made that social media has influenced box office sales because if you haven't seen it, you can hear about it instantaneously on Twitter with spoiler posts or on Facebook. So it's kind of like, well, I'm going to save my money, but so that I can be a part of the conversation, I'm going to go here and piece together what I can. So there could be that too. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I was also thinking that the technical angle that yes, movies are more expensive now, but with Avatar there were tons of tickets sold for the 3D version, and there were tons of tickets sold for to see it in IMAX. So was there a 3D version of Star Wars? Of the Star
Yeah,
Wars?
yeah,
Okay,
there
all
was.
right,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, that's weird. It's strange that I heard absolutely no noise or buzz about the 3D version at all.
Yeah, I saw it in 3D. I mean, you're probably better off just seeing it in IMAX. I think it was more of an IMAX experience worth. The 3D was all right. It was not bad.
Okay, good deal. Let's go on to what is coming soon. So, opening next week, we have Dirty Grandpa, which is a Dan Mazer film starring Zac Efron and Aubrey Plaza and Robert De Niro. Have either one of you guys seen the trailers for this or seen or heard anything about it? Did that
No.
question come across, or was I muted?
Yeah, it came across. I was looking at something else, and I don't know what John was doing.
No, yeah, sorry.
No, I don't know anything about it.
So we're looking at the coming soons, right? The Dirty Grandpa and stuff like that. The only one that I did see a trailer of, and I think most people probably did because it's been with the bigger releases, is The Fifth Wave.
Okay.
That one, I like Chloe Grace Moretz. I think she's a good young actress, who's still trying to find her footing in the industry, but she's getting these lead roles. I saw her in the remake of Carrie, which was okay, not great, but it was all right. But she's good in there. Forgot what there was another movie I saw her in, and she was good.
She was in what was the recent remake? She was in The Equalizer with
That's right. That's right.
I want to say Robert De Niro.
Denzel
With
Washington.
Yeah, Denzel
Yeah,
Washington.
yeah.
Um,
And while we're on the movie, so that's my
yeah.
thing with her as a lead actress. Like I really want her to, well, her and Dakota Fanning. They're both doing this thing where they're kind of going back and forth between teenage and younger roles and adult roles, and that is just kind of really weirding me out. Like I really want them to just hit that threshold and just say I'm doing all adult roles now, because like Moretz's role as a prostitute in The Equalizer, and then even in this Fifth Wave when it looks like she's playing a high schooler, like that jarring of a disconnect is just a problem for me, and I really just want her to go one way or the other. And the same for Dakota, just like pick, which kind of role you're gonna do.
Yeah, I mean, Fifth Wave, it's pretty much gonna be and looks like one of those another like one of those young teen movies that's been coming out. That's what it kind of looks like.
It's based off of a book, a young
Right.
adult novel.
Right,
So
yeah,
of
so-
course.
Yeah, so it's just basically gonna be that. It looks a little overly CGI for me, but that's just me. The
I'm
other
actually-
ones I have not seen the trailers of, but I have heard. Dirty Grandpa, obviously, I've heard.
Hmm.
Is that a follow-up? No, that's not a follow-up.
No, it's not a follow-up, but it's done by Dan Mazer, who unfortunately is the director of Bruno and Borat and a few movies with what is that actor's name? Sasha.
Oh yes. Oh, I'm not even gonna
I
try
can't
the
remember
last
his
name.
name, but
Sasha Baron Cohen.
yes.
There you go.
Ali G.
Anytime.
And none of those characters in movies are anything that I find appealing. They're actually huge turnoffs. So, Dirty Grandpa, however, looked interesting as far as a comedy, and this is the time of year for it. We talked about the box office rundown and how uh, a, a movie like I don't even remember, what was the name of the number one movie again, John?
Oh, Right Along too.
Yeah, a movie like Ride Along 2 comes out as number one, and I guess I just feel like this January and February especially are just the time for comedies and rom-coms, and have an opportunity to do well. I think because maybe people are just tired of the big blockbuster, from the summer, and then the few that trickle out in the fall, and then obviously something like Star Wars in December. Sarah, you came off mute. Is that because you're about to say something?
Well, but then you have Daredevil dropping February 14th, because that makes sense.
Wait, you mean Deadpool?
Deadpool, my bad. I'm tired. I'm not going to talk anymore.
No, and Deadpool's an interesting thing because it definitely, and I think they're deliberately having it come out at a time where it's not going to compete directly with some of the heavyweights, and that's because tonally it's an off-kilter superhero movie from the typical stuff that we've been getting for the last few years. So I think I think it's fine for it to come out then. And I think it'll do. I don't know. I guess it'll do well. I do kind of question because is the 14th Valentine's Day? Yeah, that's just weird. Like I don't know how guys who are in. And it's going to sound like a stereotype. It's not meant to say that as a stereotype. I'll call it a trend, and I think the trend is valid. I think it's going to be tough for guys who are in a relationship to be pinched in between, the Valentine's Day date and going to see a rom-com, even if it's like a stay-at-home date, and getting the time squirreled away to go see Deadpool on opening weekend. And, and that's not meant to be anything negative. I'm married. I'm probably going to see a rom-com that weekend. Whether it's a stay in movie with my wife, or I'm going to go out and getting the time to go see Deadpool is going to be a little difficult that weekend. So yeah, I'll just run them down then. Again, Dirty Grandpa, which is a Dan Mazer film starring Zac Efron, Aubrey Plaza, and Robert De Niro. Fifth Wave, starring Chloe Grace Moretz. Mojave will be coming out, which actually stars Oscar Isaac and Mark Wahlberg. It feels like Oscar Isaac has a contract written that requires him to be in a movie at least once a month, now that he's been in Star Wars.
He should.
Yeah, I have no problems with that.
Nope.
And Exposed, which is a Declan Dale film starring Keanu Reeves. Now, the weird thing about Exposed is, credit-wise, Keanu did not look like a headliner, at least as far as the order of listing of the cast, which I think most people know due to, I think, union rules or Screen Actors Guild rules. They're required to be listed in order of salary, except for the and starring person at the end of a cast role, and or if the cast is listed by alphabetical order, that's not required. But Keanu's name was not at the top. There are a large number. It's a Latin American story about a family, but I guess one of the family members is a cop, and I think Keanu was that cop's partner. So it was just kind of weird how he showed up in the casting role. So it's difficult. It's been difficult for me to get a handle on exactly what that film is, but and it's also, it doesn't feel like the marketing is really making it seem or feel like a Keanu Reeves film. So that's just kind of interesting. We're probably going to short fuse the news, but we'll go ahead and push on to the news. And I'm going to go out of order here a bit, so hopefully that doesn't throw you guys off too much. So the Deadpool film has been officially rated. Did you guys see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not surprised either.
and the verdict is an R. I think the fact that it was, the belief that it was going to be an R got leaked a couple of weeks ago, but this is the official assignment by the Motion Picture Association of America. Any thoughts or feelings on that? Good, bad, or otherwise?
It's going to be so cool because this will be, I think, technically the first comic book film with an R rating. So it's kind of like all out there. So I'm really excited to see how that film turns out, because it's just going to be I think it's just going to be a crazy comic book movie, and the R allows it to be that way. I mean, it was going to be that anyway, but they were not going to make that PG-13.
Wasn't Watchmen rated R?
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Shut up, Sarah.
Yeah. This one's gonna be nuts.
But
Whatever
definitely
John said.
Definitely the first rated R movie featuring a Marvel or DC hero, as far as I know. And that's Marvel or DC official label. So if there's been some like if a book based on Vertigo or some label that Marvel or DC now own as a subsidiary, I'm not counting those. But yeah, that should be pretty interesting. The strange thing for me is that R rating in all the trailers that I see. It's definitely good kind of comic book fare. For Ryan Reynolds, the fact is he's basically being Van Wilder as Deadpool, and even though that's the fact, it doesn't bother me, because I've seen that guy's commitment and the hard work he's put into bringing this character to the big screen in the right way. So he definitely gets props from me for that. So second news story is J.J. Abrams' 10 Cloverfield Lane is coming, I think, like in March. And the big deal with this is it just kind of came out of nowhere. I don't think there's been a huge ton of buzz about this. It interestingly stars another... now I'm forgetting the movie. It stars Mary Elizabeth Winstead, along with John Goodman, which is an interesting mix. And everybody's belief is that, and it's a J.J. Abrams joint, and everybody's belief is that it is a movie that depicts events that occurred outside of the continuity of the core story of Cloverfield. Now, did Abrams do? Was Abrams a Cloverfield film?
I think so. He might have just been a producer on that one.
Yeah, and I just because I wasn't into like Lost or Alias or things like that when that movie came out, I just wasn't consciously aware of his involvement with it. But
Yeah, I just checked. He was just a producer. It was directed by Matt Reeves.
okay, all right.
Yeah.
Why does that name sound familiar to
I
me?
think he's the
He
director.
did
Yeah, he's the
Planet of the
director.
Apes?
Yep. Planet of
Yeah.
the Apes. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So I don't know. Any thoughts from you guys on not just the movie, but just kind of the way this movie just kind of dropped out of nowhere, seemingly deliberately, like right before the movie is about to release.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen the first movie. I know I have a friend who's just a huge fan, so I'm sure he flipped out about it when he found out. But yeah, I don't have strong ties to Cloverfield. I like Abrams, but I know he's just a producer on it. Um, and I find it amazing that they were able to keep it quiet and just drop it out of nowhere, and then say, "Oh, it's releasing in a month and a half to 2 months." So that's pretty cool, especially nowadays with social media and everything else. So yes, Sarah, was that a stretch? No.
That was a stretch.
Oh, okay. I
That
thought you were like
was
raising. Ah! No, no.
a
Okay.
stretch.
Yeah, yeah. And, it's not atypical for JJ to pull things like this.
Right.
I'll say it's not entirely surprising. It appears to be very much a locked room
Oh
movie.
yeah.
Three characters on a very small set. Um, Probably not a lot of trucks rolling to tip off that this movie was being shot in the first place. But the other thing is he's had the cover of Star Wars buzz, right, for the last year and a half to 2 years. So, if anybody saw him engaged in anything, they would most likely just assume it had something to do with Star Wars, and he was probably able to pull this off in pretty short order. So, John, you dropped a news story about Daredevil showrunner Doug Petrie responding to some negative comments from Frank Miller about his version of Elektra that he's putting in Daredevil season 2.
Yeah. Yeah. That was interesting. Frank Miller, obviously one of the original writers. He has one of the two iconic runs of the character in the comics. Um, and basically, at a convention, Miller said basically that the show could do whatever they want with the character of Elektra, but that's not her. That was his comment. So Doug Petrie, he's a showrunner. He said recently, that he's a huge fan of Miller. He's an inspiration to him. But that he says she's an empowered woman with her own agency. She's nobody's victim. And then he says, Elektra lets it out. Basically, just trying to say she's going to be her own take on it, but that she's a strong female character. I have no problems. The show did a great job in its first season. Punisher's already getting a lot of great feedback. I'm sure it's gonna be fine. Is it gonna be exactly what Miller's vision of her was when he created her? No, of course not. But they've got control over the character, so I think they're gonna do fine with it. But it's just interesting everyone's, I think, making a big deal of it because it's Frank Miller. Like, okay. I'm sorry for comic book fans, and they hear me say that, and they flip out. But okay, it's Frank Miller. Let's move on. It's Daredevil. They're gonna do a great job with it.
Sarah, any comments? I think you're a big fan of that show.
Sure. I liked it. I wouldn't.
It was your gateway to Jessica Jones.
Not really, no. I was
Okay.
excited about Jessica Jones because I heard about the story and of the series that they were basing it off of, and that really impressed me. So that's really intrigued my interest in it. And then Daredevil, it was really done well. The story didn't grab me as much. There was an episode that I'm pretty sure 80% of it I skipped over, and Everett Harn, if you're listening, I'm not sorry. I'm just still processing John's comments about Frank Miller. So yeah, there's that.
Well, it's an interesting thing, and I'm probably more of a floppy fish on this than I would claim that I am about anything else, and that's we constantly go when it's a novel. When it's a novel or a writer has penned a screenplay, I'm much more on that person's side about corporate or the network or the studio, contaminating their creative vein and mucking with the characters and skewing them away from what that writer originally intended. Licensed properties gets to be something different. And I often comment about the fact that, like, when characters are not what they are in the comic, I'm okay with that. We shouldn't necessarily expect them to be the same, and there should be some creative license for the filmmaker. I will admit I have the opposite feeling about when a comic arc or movie is labeled with something by the marketing department, and then the movie isn't really that. A la my somewhat controversial views on Civil War, because my feeling is that's not Civil War, and it gets me in that zone where I'm like, so you don't need to call it that. But as far as Frank Miller and his comics go, and I love Frank Miller. I mean, he's a great comic book writer, as is Alan Moore. I bring that up because I've recently been watching The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and when Alan Moore takes umbrage to what was done to League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, maybe I give that more of a nod. When Frank Miller says it, and I don't, to take nothing away from Frank Miller, but the fact is, Daredevil isn't really his either. And maybe he created the character of Elektra, but once no character in the comics ever remains what the original author penned them as, even when they stay simply in the comics. So I don't know. I don't know that any comic book. It's sad. It's definitely sad. But if you're not doing a creator-owned comic, I'm not really sure that any comic book writer can lay claim to any character and expect them to remain static in comics or in other forms of media. So stepping down off my soapbox. Let's round out news with this discussion of the next round, which was an article in New York Magazine compiled from the thoughts of the director of Creed, Ryan Coogler. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan. Did either of you get a chance to at least skim this article?
No, I'll do it. Yeah.
Yep, that's fine. So, and I didn't read it in depth, but apparently, Creed has been getting some pretty widespread acceptance. Lots of buzz about Sylvester Stallone's portrayal in the film, that it's kind of a comeback role for him, as far as something he does where he can be taken seriously as an actor, and perhaps washing the foul stench of The Expendables out of some people's mouths. And The Expendables are fine, in my opinion, are fine spectacle movies, but Sylvester Stallone doesn't really have to do anything acting-wise in that. And I think, I'm not sure, maybe a couple of us have commented on this show that he's probably a better actor than he is often portrayed as. But the one thing that I found interesting in this article was Coogler's comments on the different creative pressures when you are doing what I will call a black movie. And I mean a movie starring African American actors, not a dark comedy or dark drama. So, and not to take anything away from his takes, but he made a very typical comment that that you don't have to defend or do anything special for, and I am paraphrasing his words, these are not mine. You don't have to do anything special with quote unquote white art, because white art is what the world is. But when you're doing an art that is centered around minorities, then it's something different. And he specifically says that in reference to America or the United States. Um, and he's commenting about not only do you have to respond to different pressures creatively, in the medium that you're presenting the content in, but then you also have to deal with a lot of the conversation surrounding it. And that is an argument that gets waged. I'm most familiar with it being waged in the context of history, both in terms of discussions of education, but also having been a history major and having to present, my opinion or my thought on the way history is often presented in textbooks. That, if you take a quote unquote Black history class, that can sometimes be questioned, and a common argument is to respond with, well, there doesn't need to be a white history class because that's what history is. It's essentially, white history. So, any thoughts or comments on that from you guys?
That was interesting. I definitely it sounds like one of those thought pieces, and I definitely want to sit with that and read it, because that does sound definitely interesting. It's always interesting to hear what these kind of up and comers, or kind of trying to get themselves out there type of thing, or just not only that, but just Ryan Coogler seems to have a very interesting vision. It's always interesting to hear what type of vision a director has, or whomever. It's always really fascinating to hear how someone sees the world, really.
Yeah, I think it brings two things to mind. If I'm understanding what he was talking about in the article correctly, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like something I heard Morgan Freeman say, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago, where somebody was interviewing him and they defined him as the best African American actor, and he's like, well, I'm an actor, so you don't have to note it by putting my race and ethnicity before it. So you should just lump me together with everybody else, because you don't talk to somebody and say you're the best Caucasian actor or actress. So, and then there's another piece about, and it's actually a pretty famous piece about, there's no such thing as strong female characters. There's just female characters. You hardly ever hear somebody notate a male character as strong male character. It's not as general, but with females, they're classified as different things, drawing attention more to their gender and taking away from whatever they've contributed to the project. So I think that's on the same level of Kugler's comments. I could be wrong.
I would agree with that. It's kind of along the same vector, and I'm guilty of it also. Well, I don't know. I'm guilty of it, or I can be accused of trying to help it in that way. One of the comments I often make is, it is harder for me, and I imagine for others, to identify the key female actresses that will get my butt in a seat, right? If we're talking about the butts in seats factor, by which movies are cast, Kate Blanchett is a favorite of mine, and when I talk about female actors or actresses, I do often separate them, but it's I would say if I'm going to rank my favorite actors and actresses 1 through 10, there would probably wind up being more males in that list than females, and so I do separate the females out so I can talk about my favorite female actress and not necessarily have it be in a comparative list against males. And yeah, I do. I've been listening to a lot of the podcast Rewatchable lately, because they're rewatching Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I think even either we or maybe it was on Weekly Geekly, we're recently talking about Scarlett Johansson and the Black Widow in the Marvel films, and yeah, I do sometimes have to feel like I have to talk about female roles, and those roles being significant because they are standout roles, because they break the typical Hollywood paradigm, which is not to show an empowered, strong female heroine. And in particular, not to have her be the top billed cast member. So yeah, I think it's along in the same vein, and the point is that those those issues of those characteristics of diversity, race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, when they are part of the core content of a film, then the film gets discussed in a different context, and they get discussed in a different context, and it's not the norm, because the norm is for movies to be about white males, So I think that was his whole point. So cool. So I'm going to have a skip the what you've been watching section and just go ahead and go on to our top 5, if that's okay with you guys.
That's
fine. So tonight, mainly for our main discussion topic, we want to talk about our top 5, and it is guilty pleasures. We rules of engagement on this. We allowed it to be either movies or TV. It was up to the end of each individual cast member, and your list could be an intermix, just as we did with top 5 space adventure. So the one question I want to ask about this is, how did you guys approach this in terms of what was your threshold by which something could be allowed to be a guilty pleasure? Because what I struggled with was, so there were things that I would pick, and I was like, well, is that a guilty pleasure? Do I feel like most people tend to dislike it? And even if they do I agree that this is bad, but I still love it, or do I just declare that those people are wrong?
I had the same exact problem.
Yeah, same here.
And then it really came down to me thinking, do I feel guilty for liking it? Yes. Okay.
Right. Is this something you would put in your Twitter feed and hope that, thousands of people retweeted it?
That's debatable. Okay, there's a lot of stuff I put in my Twitter feed that I don't know.
I would agree. There are times I see your Twitter feed and I feel like it's time for an intervention, but that's a topic for another day. So
that's so mean.
Okay, so that's good. So what yardstick did you guys use?
I mean, for me, thinking about each one, I said, I thought of mine as, okay, what are the movies or the shows I've seen that I kind of feel kind of almost alone in saying that I really like them, and every time I talk about them, I'm like, no. Every time I bring them up, it's either like this kind of like, oh, you like that, okay, cool. I don't watch that, or I've never heard of it. That's kind of like how I based it off of, or I just feel like I almost feel alone in my fandom of that show or movie.
Okay.
And some of the, I mean, and some you can argue some of the ones on my list are maybe critically acclaimed or held in high regard, but I still kind of feel there's not this. It's more of a tight-knit group of people that really like it instead of, oh my God, it's Breaking Bad, like something like that.
Right. Sarah, how about you?
John, if you have Breaking Bad on your list, then
no, it's
you
not.
need an intervention.
No, yeah, I would agree with you there too, because no, it's not, because that's why I made it my example. Is like, yeah, that is not a guilty pleasure. It's the same thing with Game of Thrones, Walking Dead. Those are not guilty pleasures. All right, bye everybody.
So Sarah, what yardstick did you use as far as your judgment?
Do I feel guilty about liking this movie?
Okay, gotcha.
Do I get a weird smile on my face when I'm like, yeah, I watched that? Don't make eye contact.
So I'll say for my rules, what I did not include is I did not include any reality TV, which arguably maybe I should have, if I went back and thought about it more. But 2, I did have things that I declared that people were wrong in their dislike for the movie. Probably my biggest example, because it's pertinent to Geeks Worldwide, is Man of Steel. There was a point where I was going to put Man of Steel on this list because there are numbers of our staff who don't like it. I quite honestly, I don't know that they're large. I just know that it's come up in conversation, and I decided that the world is wrong about Man of Steel. I think that's a good movie, so I don't qualify.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Yeah. All right.
I was actually considering Man of Steel as well.
Good, good. I'm glad that we both elected to not put it on there. So with that, Jonathan, I'll let you start with your number 5
All
on.
right. I want to start with an honorable mention that just missed it. But so I have 4 TV shows, 1 movie. The honorable mention is the 2014 Godzilla. Um, I didn't count it as guilty. I didn't count it as a guilty pleasure because there was my 5 trumps it in how much I like it. So this would be number 6 if this was a top 10, pretty much. So Godzilla, because it's not a great movie. The first, I would say, 30 minutes or so with Bryan Cranston are real. That's the good part of the movie, I would say. And then after that, I guess it's safe to spoil it. Once he kind of just like dies, um, it it doesn't. Aaron Taylor Johnson doesn't hold that movie up very well. Um, I wish they would have leaned more on Elizabeth Olsen, but again, this is an argument for another day. But when it gets into the Godzilla part after an hour, and it's just you see Godzilla, and the sound design in that movie just blows me away. Um, that's what gets me excited. And I remember seeing it for the first time, and then I watch it almost every year again, just to hear the sounds of that movie. It's just so cool. It's not good as a movie, but it's just so cool to watch. But yeah, anyway, so I don't want to linger too much on that. But number 5 is a TV show that I really like, but I feel doesn't get enough credit and attention is Penny Dreadful on Showtime. I really, 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 really like that show. It's very well done in the era of Victorian London. Uh, and it's just they change the story, not change, but they take these stories of Frankenstein, playing with the idea of Dracula being in the universe, and have these really, really standout performers in Eva Green, who I adored before even the series came out. Timothy Dalton, who I will be honest, never had seen him before in any movie or whatever before this show, and I really, really like him. Josh Hartnett came back, big fan of his from Black Hawk Down, and he was gone for a while, and I think this was his first thing coming back after like kind of laying low for many, many years. He's really good. If you haven't seen it, I don't want to tell you what character he plays, but it's really cool when it's revealed. Um, and it's just so well done. When you watch it, it's almost like you're escaping into this other world. You are in the era of Victoria London. It's just the costuming, the designs, the cinematography, everything is so well done. The performances are fantastic. Um, I'm not big into like horror and stuff like that and that Halloween stuff, but this is one of my favorites. And you'll probably question me by saying that because my next one is in that type of genre as well. But yeah, Penny Dreadful for sure. And it's critically acclaimed. It's coming for a 3rd season in May. So it's doing well, but I just feel that not enough people talk about it. It's so, so good.
Okay, very cool, very cool. So, and I'm tempted if I would allow myself to break the rules and make a last-minute update, I would switch one of mine out for the Timothy Dalton Bond films, the 2 Living Daylights and License to Kill, because I feel like those are the Timothy Dalton Bond films are ones that people typically malign and don't think very highly of, and I feel that's unfortunate and inaccurate. But I'll stick with my list. My number 5, and it's interesting to hear because I know Sarah's are predominantly going to be TV shows, and Jonathan, it sounds like yours are also. I'm actually the complete opposite. Most of mine are movies, with one exception. But my number 5 is Star Trek: The Motion Picture, the first Star Trek film. I can't remember exactly when that came out. I want to say that was 1978. I think it was the year after Star Wars. It may have been 79. It may have been 2 years after Star Wars. But most people consider this movie boring and don't think very highly of it. My feeling is that Star Trek: The Motion Picture is very much what an episode of the original series was like. It's just that it's 2 or 3 times as long. But if you consider it if you think of it like as a 2-part show from the original series, I think it becomes a little more palatable. There are some very long sections of them doing nothing but overflying the V'ger probe, and that's if we judge that like we do typically when we talk about movies and I ask that question about pacing, this movie would probably get knocks for that. But you also have to think about it in the time that big, wide shots like this were not something that were typically done. When Star Wars came out, these big, wide shots were typically very frenetic with lots of smaller fighter craft flying around and whatnot. And it's very much a character story. And I will admit, in the Star Trek movies, it's the even numbers. When we talk about the original series, it's the even number movies that are the best. So, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, and Star Trek VI, Undiscovered Country are the better of the films. But I do really like Star Trek: The Motion Picture. I have to kind of work myself up to be able to sit through all, whatever it is, like 2 hours and 47 minutes or something of it. I can't remember exactly how long it is, but that is my number 5 guilty pleasure. Miss Sarah, what's yours?
Okay, first I have to excuse my dancing. Rami Malek just won the Critics' Choice Award for Best Male Actor in a Drama, so I'm very happy for him. Anyway, and Mr. Robot is not a guilty pleasure by any means. It is a fantastic show. But my number 5 guilty pleasure is a movie that I don't know a lot of people are aware of, but it's 2005's Prime with Uma Thurman, Brian Greenberg, and Meryl Streep. And why it's a guilty pleasure for me, because the storyline is completely messed up. I never in 1,000 of years would have thought that I would have liked this, but having watched it and now that I own it, yeah, it's one of my guilty pleasures, because it's essentially about Uma Thurman. It plays a career-driven photographer who falls for Brian Greenberg's character, and there's like an 18-year gap between their ages. So it's about being in a relationship with an older woman. And then it gets a bit twisted even after that, because she's seeing a psychiatrist played by Meryl Streep, who's Brian Greenberg's mother. And in the therapy sessions, they talk about Uma Thurman's character's sex life. Not creepy at all. But yeah. But
that's knowingly? The mom knows who she is, and that's who he's talking about?
The mom figures it out. And then I forget the exact reason why she can't. She really wants to help the character. It's a lot of things going on. Add a layer of coming from a Jewish family, and Uma Thurman's not Jewish. So you have like, oh, why can't he just settle her down with a nice Jewish girl? But the ending is so sweet. And I was talking to Everett about it earlier, and he's like, I hate that movie because of the ending. I'm like, that's one of the reasons why I love it, because it's a bittersweet ending that you don't get too often with these types of films. So I recommend it, and you are not alone in liking it if you watch it.
Okay. On to our number 4s. So my selection at number 4 is another movie. From a director who I typically put on blast in various podcasts, and not really necessarily even because I dislike his films, but just because the negative comments about his films are accurate. That does not necessarily, again, like I said, mean that I don't like them. A lot of his films I do, and these two stand out to me the most, and that is Bad Boys and Bad Boys 2, which are Michael Bay films. And you can say whatever you want. The movie's a bunch of explosions. The movies aren't very smart. I just love seeing Will Smith and Martin Lawrence on screen together. They have a great vibe. They clearly, I think, had fun shooting the film together, and that comes out. The addition of Gabrielle Union in the second film, at that point in her career, was good. It's a great dynamic, and again, from a diversity aspect, I just I like seeing. I had fun watching two African Americans in a buddy cop movie that was high action, high adventure, especially when the second one is portrayed as a screw up, but frequently as the guy who pulls through in the finale. You kind of expect Will Smith's character to always pull off some amazing stuff, but when Martin Lawrence's character pulls it off, it's really enjoyable. And Martin Lawrence's character in the movie is also married, so I've kind of been exposed to these movies on both sides of that line myself. Seeing it as a single guy in his bachelor years, who probably would identify more with Will Smith's character, and then being married and having kids, and now being able to see much more of the humor and comedy and what Martin Lawrence is going through. Um, I just find the movies enjoyable. So, Sarah, what's your number 4?
There you go. My number 4 is another movie. It's Complicated from 2009. And another Meryl Streep movie. This is bizarre. I don't understand it. But, okay, so essentially this movie is about old people having sex. And yet, I liked it. It was charming. And I blame John Krasinski for being cast in it, and all of the food porn, because there was a lot of edible delights pleasantly displayed on screen, as the reason for me not minding too much all of the grossness. Yeah.
I will say I haven't seen that movie in a while, but I remember seeing it. That movie is really funny. It's funny and it's just fun to watch.
Yeah, it's refreshing, and it's just it's something unexpected. I think you go in thinking, I'm not going to like this. I don't even know why I'm watching it. Well, yep. Meryl Streep's in it, John Krasinski's in it, Steve Martin, and then you're like, oh, actually, I like that. Actually, now I own it. Huh. I don't know what this says about me.
So now this, so I'm gonna pause a sec to question what is it that defines this as being in the guilty pleasure category? Because I thought this movie was actually good. It's done very much in the same vein as As Good as It Gets, which was pretty widely acclaimed. Why do you feel this is a guilty pleasure?
As Good as It Gets is a way better movie in my opinion. This movie is charming and delightful, but As Good as It Gets, for some reason, watching that movie, and I own that movie too, but I would never consider that a guilty pleasure because there's subject matter in that's so much more dramatic, and this movie is just so much more fun. At the same time, I feel guilty about saying that I like it. Yeah, I understand. I don't think a lot of people don't like the movie. That being said, a lot of people aren't fully supporting it because of the subject matter. And just this it's about, they're really older people, and it's really just about them having going on dates and having sex lives and getting back in the game, and you're like, what? Okay.
Right, and Alec Baldwin was in that too?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, cool. Jonathan, you're up. Number 4.
Yeah, the word porn the word porn is going to be dropped again, but Spartacus is my number 4. It's another show when it was on, I think the only person I ever heard about this show from was my dad, who suggested it to me. He's like, you got to watch this show. And I was like, man.
Yeah, I watch it also. Although, admittedly, I'm coming to the show late. I didn't glom onto it as quickly because it takes me a while sometimes to get situated with shows or movies that are like ultra violence, and I worry that that's the only appeal. This movie, from a palette standpoint, just getting into the zeitgeist, also stumbled a little bit because I guess the original lead actor died,
right. Yes.
And they swapped him out. So, due to no fault of the show, and it's definitely tragic that character passed away, but I think it faltered a little bit just from a branding aspect.
I agree. I really do agree because when it first debuted, the reason why I didn't see it right away, it was 2010. I was still in high school, so I couldn't see it. But when I was allowed to watch it, it was my first year of college, and so when I saw it, it was really my first TV show that I was able to watch that had a little more adult themes, and I mean, not a little bit for this one, but this was full on violence and soft porn, and the visuals, everything about it insane, absolutely insane. Storylines, it gets a little soap opera-y, which is really cool. But I watched it for the action, really. Just amazing, cool action sequences. But yeah, I agree. I really liked. Oh man, I always remember his name, but I really liked. So Liam McIntyre came in as Spartacus. He was the one that came on for the final 2 seasons. He's Weather Wizard for those of you who are Flash fans. But yeah, Andy
Wait,
Whitfield,
is he the first or the second Weather Wizard?
the second.
Okay.
He is
Yeah,
I know he's one of the
Martin.
Martin brothers, but I can't
Right,
remember the first name. But yeah, he's the second one. He's not the one
right.
who died in the first episode of season 1. But
Right.
yeah, so Andy Whitfield was the original Spartacus who played, and I really found him to be charming and just he embodied the character for me. Um, he was more attractive, in my opinion, but that's me. But Liam McIntyre, yeah, he just kind of brought this kind of roughness to it. But then also, for me, you spend the whole season with Andy Whitfield, and there's all these emotional trials that Spartacus goes through that you're just so connected with him, and you go through these emotional things with this character, and then all of a sudden you see a different face on him. And then in seasons 2 and 3, when you get those payoffs, and they're really, really great payoffs in terms of killing off someone that was a pain in the butt in the first season, that was a nemesis throughout the whole series, and you see this other guy doing it, it's satisfying as a fan of the series, but then seeing someone else doing it, I was like, man. So that's where it's the guilty pleasure for me, where it's like I really appreciated the action and everything that it did. It was done well, and it was just fun to watch. But I felt like it was one of those shows that was never really talked about also. And
Yeah.
Stephen DeKnight was a showrunner. He's the guy who helped out on Daredevil also. So, but
Yeah, I think that show, I think the traction on that show slipped a little because it came out, I want to say, on the heels of 300.
Ooh, you might
And
be right there.
and some of the cinematography is looks very similar stylistically.
Yeah.
But I just, and then Rome was also going on HBO, I think, at the same
Yeah. It was
time,
a
and I
lot.
think a lot of people were confused about where that show was coming from. I think what a lot of people don't know is that Lucy Lawless gets a lot of
Yes.
screen time in that
Yes.
show, um, and I think people are kind of unaware that she's a part of that cast. So
Yeah, she's really good in the show, and so is John Hannah. I think that's who it is. John Hannah was really surprisingly good. He played in the Mummy films.
okay,
So yeah.
all right. So on to number 3. This is my one TV show that's in my rundown, and Sarah looks like she's very excited to hear what it's going to be. So I'm just going to let that soak for a few seconds, let her anticipate it. Yeah, okay, we'll go on. So my one TV show that I have in the list is Supergirl. Um, I think that show is getting a lot of traction at this point. It is on an upswing, but I've been with it since the very beginning, when it was pretty universally panned. So I just think that uh, I'm still calling it a guilty pleasure, although within an episode or two, um, that it may not really qualify. But if I think about it from the beginning of the show till now, it's been a rough watch, especially those first 4 episodes or so. So
Oh
that is
man, I have to jump in. That one blew my mind when you said that, because I remember how I think you and I spoke about it for a while in the beginning of the season, where it was rough, except for Melissa Benoist. I think I'm sorry, Melissa, if that's not how you say her last name, but the minute you watch it, charming, perfect casting for her, really good. I like her a lot. I really do. And then everybody else is dull, except for Callista Flockhart, who I've really, really come to like. They've really done well with Cat Grant on that show, I think. But yeah, I agree. The last 3 or 4 episodes have been really, really good, just in terms of like reveals and story arcs and everything else. That Supergirl it went from being okay to good to being like, I really look forward to it now. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's oof.
the goodness of the drumbeat, them hitting that point in season 1 is very unusual for me. I want to say again, I think only because I've been listening to a lot of people who are watching Buffy for the first time, I feel like, even though most of the rhetoric around that show is that season 1 is bad, I feel like in season 1 that cast kind of got onto a good beat very early, and season 1 of Buffy was only a half season. These guys are kind of hitting that mark at the same point, but typically I'm used to, if a show's rough, it's rough for almost the entire first season, and then the second season, typically their rhythm becomes better. I'll say, actor and actress-wise on the show, I feel, I know what you, in opposition, not opposition, but in contrast to what you said, Jonathan, I feel like it's the female members of that cast who are really killing it. Like you said, Melissa Benoist, even though some of her dramatic lines in the most recent episode I felt like were a little off, but Callista Flockhart's doing well. I like what Kyler Leigh is doing as her sister Alex.
I do too. Yeah. I always I'll read reviews and people always say, "Oh, Alex is terrible on the show." I'm like, "What? I like her a lot."
Yeah, I especially like the. It feels like they're past it, and I hope this isn't too much of a spoiler. But there's this kind of two-step dance, back and forth between her and Peter Facinelli's Maxwell Lord, as far as whether or not there's going to be a romantic interest or not. And
yeah.
I really liked those episodes where that was going on.
Yeah, it was charming.
But and I can't remember Darian Harewood, who plays Hank Henshaw. I think he's really hitting a strong beat in his role as they increase the complexity of that character.
Yes.
So
one of my favorite parts of the show.
Pretty awesome. Sorry, I took up a lot of time with that. So,
No,
Jonathan,
it's awesome. Supergirl was really good.
And before we roll on, so Sarah, you almost fell out of your seat when I said it was Supergirl. So what was that? Was that because it was Supergirl, or was something going on Twitter?
First of all, I think John almost fell out of his seat too. So it was the combined, I can't believe you went there, with John and I have the same exact reaction.
I know.
But Jonathan has had a chance to explain his.
I didn't even think of it, although I've sort of stopped watching that show.
Okay.
It's too, yeah. Anyways.
Okay. All right, so Jonathan, what's your number 3?
Okay. This one, I mentioned it. So the next 3 are debatable in being guilty pleasures. But for me, I adore them, and whenever I talk about them, no one else backs me up on them. So, Hannibal is my 3rd one, the TV show. Absolutely adore that show. It is my man. It is. In terms of when I rank, I like to list movies and stuff that I consider my all-timers. And Spartacus is number 1 for me all-time in TV shows, but that's because that show came at a time when it was my first TV show I could really watch, and I explained it before. But Hannibal, the last 2 weeks on this show, I've been mind blown. But anyway, this show, man, and I've explained it before. And Sarah and I have had discussions about Anthony Hopkins and Mads Mikkelsen. Going into this, I didn't expect much. I knew it was Hannibal. I was a Hannibal fan already, but I wasn't sure how good it would be with the cast, with Mads Mikkelsen as Hannibal, Hugh Dancy as Will Graham. I was not sure how it would go. I was excited about Lawrence Fishburne being Jack Crawford, but I just wasn't sure. And then you watch it, and it's mind-bending, and it's a thriller, and it makes you really understand the character of Hannibal in a way that the movies never made me think of him. With the Hannibal movies, I was like, wow, this guy is bad. He's a cannibal. I want him dead. I want him to be caught. This one makes you kind of question that. He's bad and that he's morally terrible because he's eating people and cooking them, obviously. But at the same time, there's this side to him that is just infectious, and you want to be around him. It's very odd. And I have to credit Mads Mikkelsen's performance because, man, he's good. Really, really good. And it made me just go from not really caring about him as an actor to really respecting him now a lot. And now with him coming out in Rogue One, I think he's in another movie for Marvel. I want to say it's
Doctor
Strange. Yeah. But, man, I want to go back to see Casino Royale, where he's in it, and I didn't know anything about them at the time, and now I'm huge fans of both of them. Mads Mikkelsen is just fantastic. I argue he is Hannibal Lecter to me now. I wouldn't want anybody else in the role. Hugh Dancy's brilliant as Will Graham. I mean, the show's beautifully, beautifully shot. I mean, for every week I'd watch it and I'd be like, "This is on NBC? How? How is this on NBC?"
Well, not anymore.
Yeah, right. Unfortunately, I'm holding out hope for another season, but yeah, it's gone now. I'm gonna miss it, but I'm so glad we got 3 seasons of that show. It's so good. Again, another one on my list that's critically acclaimed, but I just feel like it didn't get enough traction to stay around.
Well, see, when you first started talking about it, I was going to give you so much crap because it's ridiculous to call it a guilty pleasure.
Yeah,
Granted,
I
and then
agree.
I started thinking about it, and when I first got into that show, and I've only seen the first 2 seasons, so I'm part of the problem with it and ratings. But when I first started watching it, I felt a little bit ashamed because it is so sickening what goes
Yeah.
on in that show. And yet it is one of the most beautiful shows
Oh yeah.
on TV. It's amazing. Like it's incredible, and just the editing, and surprisingly we're talking about a show which features a cannibal, and yet the way they cook the food it's it's horrible to say. I feel so guilty right now.
Yeah.
So yes,
That's
I'll
how I
allow it,
feel.
John. I'll
My
allow
my
it.
dad and I would watch it every week simultaneously together, and I would just be like, I don't know why do I like Hannibal like as a person. I know he's so bad, but I'm like I want to have dinner with this guy. It's so like that show just messed with me every week. But yeah,
I just want to be like watching him cook. Like
yeah.
some of those
What are you
sequences were
cooking?
the
Oh,
best
heart. Oh,
ones. I mean, I won't eat it, but
yeah,
I'll just have a glass of wine and just sit there and just watch him because they put that music on while
yeah,
like the classical.
yeah,
It's so captivating, and you're like, all I'm doing is watching a person cook.
yeah,
And there's a lot of moments in that where it keeps you entertained, and yet all it is two people having a conversation for like 10 minutes. And then there's a few action scenes, but it's mainly just, I want to say, a cast of about 5 characters who are just playing this cat and mouse game. And it's I you will feel bad for liking it, but I'll allow it. I wish I put it on my list. I hate you, John.
All right, Sarah. Well, why don't you go ahead and roll straight into your number 3?
Okay. Well, I want to can I share custody with John's number 3? I'll still mention mine, but I share custody too.
Yeah, certainly, absolutely. It's your world, Sarah.
That was mean. Um, but my real number 3.
I can do no right. I can do no right.
Really,
Anything
I
which I've
can't.
recently written about. So go ahead, proceed.
But my real number 3 is Newsies from 1992, featuring a 16-year-old Christian Bale, my first crush. Thank you very much. But it is one of these movies that came out, did horribly at the box office, and over the years has just become a cult classic, which I wasn't really even aware of until they did the Broadway show. And so a lot of people went back. But in my family growing up, we would rent this movie every year at least once. And by that point, it was so old that we would have it for five days, and we would just watch it every single day.
Well, is this a
It's
musical?
Yeah, it's a musical about a newsboys strike at the turn of the century, and you have Christian Bale dressed as a cowboy singing Santa Fe in the middle of New York City on a horse. It's utterly ridiculous, but I adore it because nostalgic reasons.
Oh, have we seen that
Uh,
Jonathan has a Newsies coffee cup?
Yeah, I saw the musical a few years
Oh,
ago.
that's awesome.
yeah. Have you seen the movie?
No, I should see it now.
Yeah,
Seize the
yeah.
day.
I'm just glad to know that that musicals are now free game on Two Guys, a Girl, in a Scene.
Yes.
I
I'm
love
actually gonna see
musicals.
one next week.
Chicago is one of my favorite musicals of all time. Favorite movies of all time, too.
I'm a big Les Mis fan myself.
Ooh, Les Mis.
Both the movie and the musical.
Yeah, I agree.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got a little...
That's all I had to say.
Mispagination here. So round number 2, even though... And I should say, again, a lot of the conversation through round 3 encouraged me to swap out for one of my... For the television series Go On, which was Matthew Perry in a one-season run on CBS. Unfortunately, that series got canceled, but where he was a comedic turn and as a radio broadcaster whose wife had recently died, and kind of a comedic take on his attempt to overcome that, given what type of personality he was. But again, I'll stick to my guns. My number 2 is a movie, and it is From Dusk Till Dawn, with George Clooney, Quentin Tarantino, and pretty much everybody who's a Quentin Tarantino cast regular in this movie, as is usually the case. Harvey Keitel. It's Salma Hayek, and Danny. Is it Danny Trejo, who is now a headliner in the Machete films? But this is definitely a guilty pleasure. It's a vampire flick. George Clooney's character is particularly extreme as a criminal. Quentin Tarantino plays his psychologically imbalanced brother. The two brothers go on the run, wind up kidnapping Harvey Keitel and his 2 kids as they are taking their RV on a trip. Harvey Keitel plays a preacher whose wife has died, and has suffered a loss of faith. Actually, no longer really believes in God. But they enter this bar called the Titty Twister, if I'm not mistaken. There's a few comedic turns as they try and get into the bar, and then once in the bar, all hell breaks loose, and they find out it's a bar infested by and run by vampires. And they have to survive the evening, and then the big reveal is once some number of them do survive, Juliette Lewis is the other actress in the film. They pull back from the bar as the survivors are escaping, and you realize that the bar is actually built into the backside of a cliff, and apparently goes about 8, 9, 10 levels deeper than what you saw in the film, which I guess is the setup for the sequel. All the sequels were released direct to video, so I never saw any of them. So that is my number 2. Sarah, what's yours?
Okay, let's talk reality TV shows, people. Because I have the pinnacle of reality TV. Vanderpump Rules on Bravo. It is a spin-off of Beverly Hills Housewives, which I have been known to tune in for. But Vanderpump Rules is just like The Hills 2.0. It is amazing and the perfect thing to just have play in the background. And then if you really feel bad about the choices you make in your life or just have a bad day, you watch a reality TV show and you're just like, well, it could be worse. So that's what I'll say. Don't shame me, John. I saw that.
And there's nothing wrong with reality TV or wrestling, for that matter, being your intellectual break from the world. So, Jonathan, what's your number 2?
Okay, I should get a drum roll for this one. This is my last TV show on the list. But I mean, anyone from GWW listening, please just hear me out on this one. I know the last couple of days with the I mentioned at the beginning, the mid-season trailer dropped, but I still am amazed that I am into a cartoon at 22 years old. Star Wars Rebels. Mic drop. I don't need to say anything else. The show is amazing. I don't know why more people. I mean, it is very popular, but I think amongst 12-year-olds. But that's okay.
No.
I am proud to watch this show. No, but yeah, it is. Casey and I have spoken about it on Cape Screw when I've gone on. It is a very well done cartoon. Very well done. It has its serious moments too. It's so good. I think yes, there is a fandom. It's popular. It's Star Wars. People like it a lot. The reason why I put it is because for me personally, I'm just shocked that a cartoon is able to be one of my it is my I can't I'm not saying one of my favorites anymore because Hannibal's off air now, but it is my favorite show on television. It trumps everything else I've been watching.
Right, and
Hands
I
down.
think that's the key thing for your identification of it as a guilty pleasure. It's not. I mean, I think a lot of people think that it's good. I think there's some level of awareness of it. I think the difference is when a lot of people stack a cartoon into their list of favorites, they kind of rank it as like its own thing. Like they don't tend to rank it against like the live action stuff that they watch. But for you, it's at like the top of your list of like everything.
Exactly. Yeah. Most weeks I always have it kind of going well over Flash and Arrow for me. Which is incredible. I find it's just an amazing show. I'm not gonna say cartoon. It's an amazing show. It's well done. They do fan service. Nostalgia. When it comes back, I mean, you're gonna have Darth Vader. I mean, it does a lot of things very well. So, Star Wars Rebels.
And that little section where I was able to comment on like your feelings of the show. See, that's how we like we're right. We know each other, man.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure, yeah, and that's exactly. I was glad that you backed it up because it's like I wanted that to be voiced as like it may be that it's not like that's exactly what the guilty pleasure should be is like it may be popular but for you if it just kind of like comes out of nowhere for whatever reason there you go.
Right.
Anyway, I'll shut up.
So my number one guilty pleasure is I'm not going to do a ton of preamble for this one is League of Extraordinary Gentlemen the movie. Um, this one is pretty widely disliked by a lot of the nerddom. Um, for me, I liked the movie. Walking in the movie, I didn't know anything about like the past history, so I didn't get a lot of the angst. Having recently just completed reading the omnibus edition of the first 12 issues, um, which were done as like done in separate, like they're two different miniseries basically. There were some more comics beyond that, but they were done under a different publisher. So these were the two that were done for I think they were done for DC. And then Alan Moore got angry and went away and worked with other people. He was also angered by the film, feeling that the film skewed away from what his books were. And most of the dislike and outcry that I've seen about the film are that it's people who dislike some of the I think they would qualify them as extreme differences and plot points and setups that the movie did away from the book. And I will admit some of the changes that were made are pretty extreme changes. And if I were a lover of the comic, maybe they would have broken through that threshold where it would bug me about what they changed. But I was a history major in undergrad. I love period pieces. I probably love steampunk period pieces just as much as real history, and I just liked the setup for this movie. And I know even though Sean Connery, I think he would maybe claim that I don't know if he would claim that he dialed his performance in, but he definitely had creative differences with the director. That doesn't show through to me. I think he did a fine job in it, and like I said, I just love this notion of an Avengers made up of Victorian era literary heroes, all centered around the defense of Britain, with all of the dryness that comes with British literature, and the darker overtones. So that's my number one guilty pleasure. Jonathan, what about you?
Yeah, before I say mine, yeah, I agree. I'm with you though on League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. It's a good movie. I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, and I'll definitely give deference to the people who say that your number five guilty pleasure, Penny Dreadful, is
Yeah.
maybe what League of Extraordinary Gentlemen should have been.
Yeah.
I will definitely capitulate to that. So,
Yeah.
so what's your number one?
Number one, it's my favorite movie of all time. I've mentioned it before. V for Vendetta. I it was introduced to me. Another one introduced to me by my dad, and I think I've become an even bigger fan than he has with it. But I watch this movie every year on the 5th of November. That is what the movie is kind of based on, is the Guy Fawkes Day type thing. I have the mask as a like a decoration in my room. I mean, V for Vendetta, I'm a huge, huge, huge fan. I watch it every year. And what makes this movie special to me is that every time I watch it, it's different every time I see it. And maybe that's because I just watch it once a year. I don't watch it any other time. It's just that one time in November. And I think that's what makes it kind of a guilty pleasure. And for me, whenever I bring it up, I'm kind of like to my dad or friends, they always think I'm like, how could you like that movie? And from the people who know of it, I've noticed either they like it or they don't. Um, Again, like we were saying with Rebels, is like this movie is just it's special to me, because it's just different every time I watch it. It's a To me, it's a beautiful movie. It has one of the best Natalie Portman performances you'll see. Hugo Weaving is V. Um, uh, I mean, it's really good. I mean, I can't. I'm only gonna say very positive things about it. There's nothing negative for me for V for Vendetta.
Now, Sarah, if your number one guilty pleasure is also a movie made from an Alan Moore comic, then we will have a hat
Oh
trick.
no. Oh no.
So it's very funny, John, that you picked V for because
Yeah.
V for Vendetta and League of Extraordinary Gentlemen are both written by Alan Moore. Um, both of those movies torqued him off significantly from his feeling that they skewed away from his original
Yep.
creation. They are both, I believe, they are creator owned. So he is truly the
Yeah.
originator of those two pieces of fiction. And V for Vendetta was the straw that broke the camel's back. After V for Vendetta, he walked away from the film industry and just basically said, he's not going to work with Hollywood anymore to turn anything that he's written into a big screen movie. So Sarah, what's your number one guilty pleasure?
It is. I don't think you'll be able to because I'm not like outspoken about my fandom for this particular show.
Oh, it's a show. Okay. Oh man.
Is it New Girl?
Nope. Nope. That's an amazing show. I would be proud of that. John,
No, you review.
you got
I,
one guess. Come on.
yeah, I was gonna say How to Get Away with Murder, but no.
No, that's an amazing show. I don't feel bad about it. It's amazing. Viola Davis.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Viola
right.
Davis.
Okay, you both failed, but that's all right.
We have failed the city.
So now it'll be public knowledge that even though if you look at my YouTube channel, I have made fan videos about this show, but The Vampire Diaries. Yes, I still watch the show. I'm not like, if you guys had met me a few years ago, I would be like so much more obsessive about it than I am currently because it's completely fallen off the rails. And
Yeah.
that's all because Julie Plec just loves bringing back people to life, which eliminates stakes in a show for me. So there's that. That being said, it is still something I, on a Saturday or Sunday, will just be like, oh, they have a new episode, so I'll throw it on while doing other things on the internet and just looking at articles. It's white noise to me at this point. And I started this series in season 1, so I feel like I have to finish it. And I'm going to even lump in the spin-off show, The Originals, which actually is doing pretty well in the 3rd season, I have to say, although I haven't watched the mid-season finale. But like I said, I could have made such a strong argument for it to be a good show because watching the first 3 seasons, it is strong, well-crafted, and they deal with immortality in a way I think is often overlooked, and the burden that it has on people, because everybody wants to live forever, and this show, well, these people do, and it comes with a price of morality and this fear and avoidance of death that these characters do every single season. That being said, it's riddled with cliches, and it just uses the same plot constructs over and over again. So it's a guilty pleasure. I'm sorry. not sorry. No.
No, I back you up on it. And again, having starting to participate in a lot of the recent conversation around Buffy and Angel, it's frequently a topic as to where there are commonalities between Buffy, Angel, and the Vampire Diaries. And I've watched a small amount of the show. I've read at least one book from the series entirely, maybe bits and pieces of others, and read some of the comics. So I get the appeal of it as a property, definitely. Have you ever watched?
Claremont.
Have you ever watched any of Buffy or Angel, Sarah?
I've probably seen more of Angel than I have of Buffy because a few years ago I was going through like binge everything that I missed before, and Buffy was something constantly being brought up because I got addicted to after shows in relation to Vampire Diaries. But I started watching it, and then after season 2, I don't know why, I just didn't feel the need to watch anymore. Angel, it was a show that got slated at one point after it went into, what's the word I'm looking for?
Syndication.
Syndication, there you go. Early mornings, so we would put that on, like, before we go to school. So, and I got addicted to that show. And then it got really weird.
Right. So yeah, it'd be an interesting conversation to talk about the similarities between the Whedon properties and the Vampire Diaries, even just as far as like mythology goes. So, but also as kind of character archetypes that seem to make runs through each of those properties. But thanks a lot for joining in. I'm going to try this. So our top 5 guilty pleasures from 5 to 1 for Jonathan Reyes. They were Penny Dreadful, Spartacus, Hannibal, Star Wars Rebels, and V for Vendetta. For Sarah, they were the movie Prime, It's Complicated, Newsies, Vanderpump Rules, the reality TV show, and the Vampire Diaries. And for me, they were Star Trek the Motion Picture, Bad Boys and Bad Boys 2, it's one pick, Supergirl the TV show, From Dusk Till Dawn, and The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the movie starring Sean Connery and Peter Wilson. So thanks so much for joining in tonight. Do we want to run through plugs? Sarah, you got anything you want to plug?
You can find me on the Netflix. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Netflix podcast and the Scene and Nerd podcast, and all my writing at thegww.com.
Jonathan?
On Twitter at Wordy Nerdy, that's with 2 E's. And then I just wanted to point to my review of, well, it's a we have to change it up because we actually already had a review of Mad Max on the site, but it was changed to a second opinion with no review score, but I do mention it's my game of the year for 2015. Give that a read, and then look forward to this week. I'm probably going to do something similar with the game Assassin's Creed Syndicate, so I'm kind of doing like a video game kind of opinion pieces over the next couple of weeks. So.
Yeah, and I read your piece on Mad Max. I would definitely encourage others go check that out. Other endorsements, I would also say check out Sarah Belmont's series on Making a Murderer. That's definitely an interesting read. And I know that the Jessica Jones crew of the Netflix crew is also doing really good work. So definitely check those things out. You can find me at Aglasicles Stamus on Twitter. That's 2 S's in the middle. I would also say hit up Geeks Worldwide and check out our new crusade on news coverage. So we're bringing you guys things more frequently on a daily basis across all the towers of our content. So comics, games, movies, TV/entertainment, and tech is also kind of experiencing renewed vigor as well. For me, if you want to check out anything I've written, you can check out the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen Omnibus Review, which I just completed. That was a labor. Unquestionably, that trade paperback is 416 pages, 12 issues of comic books, and it was also difficult to kind of clamp down on a theme for me to write the review around. So please check that out, and also check out our new weekly news show, Weekly Geekly, on the Geeks Worldwide radio network. So that goes up weekly and is kind of our new central show around current events in the geek world. So we'll be covering comics, movies, games, pretty much everything. So thanks so much for joining in. This has been our top 5 show for January. Join us next week where it will be our second viewing room episode of the month where we will be covering The Martian. So thanks very much for joining in, or if you're watching this after the fact, either way, we like it. Be sure to also rate us, like us, and follow us, and subscribe, all that stuff, on both SoundCloud and iTunes. We would really appreciate it. And with that, we are out.